What's up, y'all? Welcome to F1 Rolling Start. We are two Americans who love Formula One.
Oh, yeah.
We go under the helmet and over the top. And this week, we are going under the helmet and over the top in Vegas.
Oh, yes. It was redemption for Sin City this week in Vegas. It started with a bang, with a show. The on-track drama couldn't quite live up to it initially. There were people around the world calling this a sham, 99% show, 1% racing. Some of them were F1
Drama
drivers.
was real.
The drama was real, but at the end of the day, the house always wins. And Vegas put on what some are saying was the best race of the season.
I definitely think it was the best race of the season. By far.
Absolutely.
It was a historic weekend. Brand new race. It was historic because we had some race wins that made some records.
We did.
We had some team wins broken. We had some historic F1 drivers now in contention for the most wins of all time.
Absolutely.
It was an amazing week. Let's jump right into it. All right. Well, before we jump into this, Ben, why are we drinking out of these mugs?
Because we bought these at a crummy gas station in Las Vegas.
Buffalo Bills.
Right on the border.
Right outside of Vegas.
Right on the border. California and
Vegas.
Vegas.
California and Nevada. We bought a Welcome to Las Vegas mug. And Ben has a mug that says, I lost all my money and I can
Mine's
only
half a
afford
mug, which
half a
is
mug.
potentially the worst possible choice for drinking any type of liquid out of it.
Exactly. And so we're drinking this 2015 Super Tuscan from Italy out of mugs.
We
which
are.
is probably making real wine enthusiasts roll over in their grave.
Absolutely.
But here's why we're doing this. Number one, we want to give these mugs away. So go ahead and in the show notes, you can sign up for our email and for all of our notifications coming from Rolling Start so you can stay up to date on everything that's going on in the world of F1 beyond this podcast.
Absolutely.
And also, when you do that, you sign up for a chance to get one of these mugs signed by both myself and Ben, because our signatures, if you're unaware, are worth millions of dollars.
So much money.
Rosberg would pay me millions to sign one of his helmets. And so here we are. We're drinking these. And the reason why we were in Vegas is because we went to our first F1 race.
We went to our first F1 race. What were your initial thoughts of Vegas as a city, the track?
Okay.
Just general impressions.
Well, you'd never been to Vegas before.
No,
So I'm more interested in your
I'm
opinion of Vegas.
34 years old, and somehow, I know why somehow, I don't like Vegas. I prefer to go other places. I've been in the airport of Vegas several times. Never the city. So
that doesn't count in my
opinion. No, of course it doesn't, because I didn't walk outside the airport. Yeah, Vegas was a vibe.
Like a good vibe, like a bad vibe.
It's unlike anything else. You can't compare it to anything else.
First of all, we're driving into Vegas and it's so dark outside.
Yeah.
That it is pitch black. You can see every star in the sky, and then all of a sudden in the horizon you see what looks like the sun rising.
Yes.
And it is all of the light pollution from Vegas, literally like a beam of light going up into the clouds.
The light pollution and the nicotine from Vegas, just
clouds of secondhand smoke and broken dreams and overextended credit cards came
we were walking
pouring out of the city.
One of the casinos, and I just got secondhand nicotine poisoning walking through because of all of and then you're just here's what I'll say. Like there's a lot of show to Vegas.
Just a little bit.
So there's that, but at the same time, like you just kind of you're walking through and you're like, okay, like this there's nothing else like it. It's just something else as a city. F1 being there I thought was really fascinating.
Very unique.
Very, very unique. I think a lot of the teams, a lot of the drivers had a lot of thoughts about being there as well.
I'm sure we'll jump into those. Okay, so we went to Vegas for our first race, courtesy of our friends at the ID agency. Thank you so much for giving us those tickets. Appreciate that. And so all of our observations have nothing to do. We're extremely grateful for our tickets. However, a couple things stood out to me. Number one, Vegas is so much bigger than I remembered. It's
quite
expansive. Large. I think it's the largest, if not the second largest track on the calendar.
Yeah, it is one of the largest ones.
Ridiculously long.
Yep.
And it goes forever. And here's the thing about Vegas is it's built in literally on the main strip in a city. And so very few parts of the track are bespoke track made elements. And so you're basically plopping giant grandstands down, hoping that you get good viewerships.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was something that was really fascinating. We were right by the
pit lane entrance.
And so the straight we were on, there was some great kind of post-action results that we would see.
And pre-action.
And pre-action as well. But yeah, when you're there in person, it's almost, the cars are passing too fast for your
eyes literally, my eyes could not keep up.
Yeah, and so you see about, however 3 seconds of the race in person, and then you are gifted with some phenomenal commentary.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so here's the thing. Number one, I just need to publicly say how much I love Crofty and how much I appreciate
a god among men,
his commentary.
Phenomenal.
How much I appreciate Alex Jakes on F1 TV, how much I appreciate Jolyn Palmer, Hinchcliffe, all of the team who commentate, because we had 2 commentators in live Vegas, and they must not, for whatever reason, they must have picked their own commentators, and they were shocking.
I was stunned that you could spend $500 million on an event and get that critical piece so wrong.
They were so bad.
One of the commentators was eating what it sounded like the entire time, and making mouth noises.
Yes, just full. What is that ASMR? Like that full, like they were like, wait, hold on. They were like, yeah. And Ocon and Bottas, and
I was like, who is Bottas?
Bottas. And the thing that killed me was like they were the stereotypical American commentators from 1985. Welcome to Vegas, and we're so excited for the F1 race 2023. And we're on the strip now looking at the cars, and we're walking and we're looking for, like, it was literally that. That was verbatim. That was actually not me ad-libbing in a terrible way. That's verbatim what they said.
That was exactly what was happening. The entire team of reporters was stunningly awful. And again, like, understanding that this is a hard job, but there are people who do it very well. So why don't you just pipe them in?
Oh my gosh. Again, Martin Brundle doing the track walk is 700 times better than whoever those people were. Ted Kravitz in the pit lane. Will Buxton in the pit lane.
Oh my God.
Laura Winters doing the grid walk. Like, we have Lawrence Barretto. There's so many incredible people that are so good at commentating. And then we got stuck. I don't remember their names. They were awful. One of them sounded like he was about to pass away. God bless, rest his soul if he's gone already, because he was just ancient of days. It was crazy. Anyway,
it made you appreciate, though, those who do this and do it very well. So here's the thing, though, is like, I realized how important that is.
Oh my gosh.
Being there in person, phenomenal. Having that commentary for, I don't know, the other minute and however many, 30 seconds it was of the race, took me out of it in so many moments, because I only get to see 3 seconds of it in front of me. And then I've got to rely on the TV screens and these
and the commentators
to tell me the rest of the story.
And the difference between, what they were doing and what, like Crofty or any of the great commentators do is that they're steeped in F1. Mm. There's a rich F1 culture within them. And so when they're talking about the race, like, they are bringing back facts. Like Crofty has this crazy like notebook with all of these, all of these facts. They pre-do it. These guys got up to the track and basically it sounds like they knew the drivers' names. They didn't know how to pronounce them. They made some commentaries. One of them was like a NASCAR driver. So he was talking about like warming brakes and things like that. And so it was like borderline. If you've never been to an F1 race, you'd be like, oh, I guess this makes sense. But for someone who loves it, you're just like, this is the worst.
It was so disappointing. So definitely that was an element that was difficult about being there in person.
Yeah. Also, our TV was tiny. It's like they borrowed like my mom's television and put it on the other side of the track and behind scaffolding. I couldn't see anything. So Ben and I both left going like, that was an incredible experience. That was amazing. And I need to go watch the race again.
Literally,
which we both did.
I went back. I rewatched it. I rewatched Ted Kravitz. I rewatched the entire Sky Sports team and just said, thank God for these people.
Yes. Yeah,
because they're so good at what they do.
Okay. So negatives aside, those are the negatives. Positives are, number one, Burt Mylander gets down. That's all I'm going to say. Burt Mylander, for those of you, which is probably everyone who don't know who he is, he's the safety car driver.
Yes.
We were right at the pit lane entrance. And so that's where he rips off from or comes into after the safety car. And my guy was hauling. Unreal. It was wild. They were complaining about how he needed to go faster, but he was doing 197 miles an hour down the main straight.
It was incredible to see it. When you see it on TV, you're like, oh yeah, they're actually going quite slow. Yeah. And then you see it in person and you're like, wait, how old is Burt Mylander? I don't know.
Oh no, he's been doing this for decades. The guy is like forever.
And he's still roaring it.
Ripping.
It was so that was
and that Mercedes AMG GT sounds incredible. What kind of car did Red Bull make?
When was the last time Mercedes won with their incredible car?
I shouldn't wade into these battles. Anyway, they ripped. The noise was amazing.
It was phenomenal. And again, iconic, right? You're in Vegas.
Yep.
It's an iconic city. And it was a phenomenal experience to go in person. So excited for them to continue to have races there. Excited for me to probably go to other races.
Yes.
Now that I've been to Vegas.
Yeah. Well, I'll go back to Vegas. I just think driving out there on Saturday and back Sunday morning was not.
Our like death march of 13 hours.
We pretended like we were 10 years younger than we were. And it was evident by the fact that I couldn't keep my eyes open 10 minutes into the drive home. You were blasting the midnight.
I was blasting the midnight, blasting 105 miles an hour.
I opened my eyes at one point between my light snoring, and I looked over and we were doing 105 miles an hour. Sorry, Haley. And it was incredible in a rental car too.
In a rental car that I returned today.
It was amazing. It was an incredible experience. It was visceral. It was amazing. We walked up the grandstand from the backside of it, and all you can hear is F1, those turbocharged hybrid V6 engines just ripping by, lift off, overrun, and the engines just spattering and yelling at you, doing like 6,000 RPMs. It was insane.
Yeah, it's an insane experience in person for sure, especially having not been in person. So excited for more.
Very excited for more. Well, that was our Vegas experience. I'm sure it'll come up a little bit more as we go in here, when we talk about some of the insane wrecks that happen. But we are going to do the first section, which is on track. We always talk about what happened on track. So let's kick it off.
We'll kick it off. So this first part of on track, we have a few teams that we don't have a lot to say about. And we've tried to kind of sum them up into a single word because they didn't give us a whole lot more to say.
If we don't care about them, we assume that you don't care about them.
Yeah. So we will start with Bottas, Guan Yu Zhou.
Don't even say the team.
I don't even say the team. You know who the team is. So the only heat that Bottas was throwing out there was his photos that he was selling for charity of him in the
his Bottas
with his Bottas hanging out.
Yeah.
And that was it. He qualified 8th. His teammate qualified 18th. He finished 17th His teammate
a
finished
9 point.
15th.
That's 9 drop.
And my one word for them is just, yeah.
Yeah. He raised 50,000 pounds for Movember charity through his naked
buttocks.
Yeah, his
Bottas.
Bottas calendar, which is awesome.
Good
but
for him.
He also didn't do anything on track. The whole team
No.
didn't do anything on track.
No.
It was a shocking weekend for them again, and so yeah, their word is well. Ugh.
Yeah, not a whole lot there. Haas. I have my one word is just blah.
Yeah, mine is 2 words. It's groundhog. It's Haas plus.
Haas blah.
It was shocking. Again, it's just nothing. Haas is giving us nothing. This is the one track this year that they could have done something because they overheated their tires. Of course we do. This is America.
For years. We have wanted them to be better for years, and it still isn't happening. Yeah. I mean, Hulk qualifies 13th. Magnussen qualifies 9th. But we've seen that before. This is what always happens. This isn't new. They
qualify well, and they can't race to save their life.
And they just can't.
They did 2 different versions of their car this week. Hulkenberg did the old version, and Mag did the new version.
And
with all
it
the upgrades.
Looked fast.
Mag's ended up turning on and doing well, but Hulkenberg's originally started looking good. It was just a travesty. They're nowhere. The old car is crap and the new car is crap. And the new car is their direction for next year, which leads me to believe that next year is going to be a craps shoot, if you would, in the Vegas theme.
I'm trying to figure out how many Vegas idioms you're going to fit in this.
I'm going to try to fit as many as I can.
Was nowhere, but that's not new, which is why we're moving on.
Yeah. AlphaTauri. Danny Rick's back, or is he? Yuki, at one point in the race when we were standing there, did you hear me trolling Yuki? Because every car would go like, wow, 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 wow. And then there was this long gap. And then one car would come by and I'd be like, oh, it's Yuki.
Yeah, he was in a race of his own, as it were.
Again.
Yeah. Yuki qualifies 20th. Danny qualifies 15th. They were both just nowhere during qualifying. Yuki DNFs. He doesn't even finish. He had an issue with his car. So technically he was 18th. Really, the 2 drivers before him, 19th and 20th, had both DNF'd as well. And then Danny was 14th. So
second to last.
Yeah. So, I mean, they had a 3-race scoring streak, which was awesome to watch.
It was awesome.
That came to an end.
And they made Williams sweat. That came to an end. And
Williams,
and you know what it was?
Fine.
We all came into this weekend thinking, man, what is AlphaTauri going to do? Because they were looking good in a straight line. They were looking good. Yeah, they were looking slippery. Absolutely. And what we got was, my words are for the team is Firefest. It was a lot of promise and 0 delivery.
If you haven't watched Firefest, watch it.
The documentary.
It will tell you exactly what you need to know about this team. I mean, here's the thing. Mathematically, and I love data.
You're the data guy.
Story. Mathematically, it is possible. But where they're at, it is essentially over. Even though it's mathematically possible, they would have to have a miracle in the last race of the season, which if they did, I mean, Drive to Survive would be going bonkers if they could.
Oh, they're already going bonkers with Danny Rick being back. Oh, they have gotten their fair share of drama this season.
But anyway, mathematically it's possible, but
it's very unlikely going into Abu Dhabi. But we'll see what happens. But that's kind of the last of our blah teams. Those 3 are our 3 bottom for sure.
Yeah,
and then we move into kind of like Williams territory, which my word is just, it hurts. It's painful.
It does.
It's sad.
It does.
It's heartbreaking. My teenage angst is coming out.
Williams qualified so well. Sarge
insanely 7th, well. They locked out the 3rd row.
Albon 6th. They both bumped up because Sainz got a grid penalty, which we'll talk about later. So technically it was 6th and 5th. There was so much promise, so much disappointment. Kind of like Vegas, where you go into Vegas with this idea of this just spectacle, and then you're assaulted.
I'm going to leave a millionaire.
You're assaulted by the nicotine, and you're like,
yeah.
And just what is going on? And people betting their mortgage on these games that clearly, if you haven't already figured this out,
The house always wins.
the rig. The house is going to beat you.
Exactly.
You're betting on a game.
No one leaves Vegas up, especially not the common person. And that's actually really funny, because the reality is that's Logan Sargent's story this weekend. He qualifies really well. Everyone's going, "Oh, this track is the great equalizer."
All the Americans are like, "Oh, our American guy is going to do so great."
Finally, you've embraced the eagle, bro.
I was like,
and he gets hyped up, qualifies well, and ends nowhere. Just ends nowhere. Now, in his defense, Albon also ended nowhere, but I'm pretty sure Sargent was dead last again. Did you see in the Prix, when they were we didn't talk about this, but when they did like the start and they bring up the name of the person, it shows their last 5 finishing spots.
Oh no.
And it was like, you have like Hamilton, it's like 14th, 7th, second, third, whatever. Or it was like Lando Norris, and it was like whatever, second.
Yeah.
And then Logan Sargent comes up and it's just 20th, 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 20th. Like, it was so depressing.
There's a resource I have where it has the entire season and all the drivers. And if you end outside the points, they just have a dash. They don't even say
He's just fully dashed.
It's
He's
fully
full
dash
out. Yeah.
Full dash out.
Except for 1 hit point, which wasn't even a real point.
Yeah. A real point. No. Yeah. Williams, here's the thing.
They had a Vegas weekend. The worst kind.
I was legitimately excited because
Same.
I thought they could actually crack the code here. Their car is slippery in a straight line. They're faster than some others in some respects. Albon performs well. I was stunned to see Sargent that high. And then it was just kind of same old.
It was all over.
Yeah.
And not for good reasons. They didn't get super tangled up in the first corner. They didn't have a ton of race issues. Their tires went away from them. They couldn't get any race pace for the life of them. And that was a real bummer.
Yeah.
James Vowles was super pumped because he's like, we got our arm around Logan, and this is what you need to show someone that you care. This is a great equalizer
their arm
track.
around him as they lead him out the door.
Literally, as they, throw him into a vat of poisonous nicotine waste. Anyway, there's
other drivers.
There's so many other drivers.
There's
please,
so many other drivers who actually scored higher than yours did this year, and they're available.
Yeah,
my God,
Williams, listen to me. You don't have to level and set yourself up to expect your driver to finish 21st
Do you know what this is?
in the championship. 21st is outside of the 20 drivers, and it's unacceptable.
Do you know what this is? Have you ever seen someone you care about, deeply care about, and they are settling for a partner in their life who isn't a good fit? And you feel a certain way for them because you're like, why are you still with this person?
Yeah.
They don't care about you. They're not giving you what you need.
Yeah.
They're not showing up for you in the way you need it. That's how it is with Williams and Sarge.
James Vowles is in an abusive relationship with Logan Sargent. He's an enabler. He's an enabler. We're going to have an intervention with him. McLaren, my one word for them is ouch. What happened?
I mean,
literally. He crashed and went to the hospital. But what happened?
Well, here's the thing.
I'm so excited for a British person to get an American hospital bill.
Your insurance doesn't work here.
Whether he races at any of the American races next year will be evident on whether or not he pays his medical bill.
True. McLaren, we've talked about it in the podcast. They've been on a rip. They, at one point, were looking like mathematically they could go for second. That's over and done.
That's over and done.
Third's out of the picture. They can lose now 4th place.
Yes.
Which
Aston Martin could take it back.
Was a done deal for a minute. And this entire weekend, they were nowhere. They both were out in Q1. Norris was 16th. Piastri was 19th. Their car couldn't turn on for the life of them. No. They just couldn't get it to perform on the circuit. During the actual race, Norris crashes out in the early part of the race. Piastri.
And a terrible crash, too. Like, really bad.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was so cold in Vegas that the track temperature was the same temperature as the ambient air outside. And it was freezing. And so that doesn't happen in F1. Generally, the tarmac is hotter than the temperature outside,
usually during the
which
day when they
turns
race.
the tires on so that they stick to the ground and go around the corner. These tires do not have tread. These tires only work when they're hot.
Yes.
If they're cold, it's like driving on ice. And that's what the drivers are saying. It's like a wet race out here. Like it's like it is raining. And so Lando comes around a corner and the tires just don't work. And he loses control and he tries to correct it. And he slams into the wall, spins around, goes backwards, spins around again, and then hits the tech row barriers. And he came over the radio and it was like, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
No answer. "Lando, are you okay?" I hit the wall. And it was like, what? What happened? It was terrifying.
It was a bad crash.
I was like, no, Lando's my guy.
Yeah, there's a lot of other folks that have crashed and they haven't had to go to the hospital.
100%.
So
he hit hard.
Definitely hoping that he's okay. It sounds like he is.
Sounds like he's good. And I'll be honest, Piastri started 19th, ended 10th. At one point, he was for most of the race in the top 5.
Yeah.
And he did a phenomenal job. Great race. Came back. He ended 10th, but he got fastest lap. So he ended with 2 points.
Yeah.
Great drive from Piastri again.
Yeah.
He was kind of in no man's land during the race. Like the top 4 would go by and then he would kind of roll by. But, points is points. And where they are in the constructors, it helps. They needed more this weekend.
They really did, especially with Aston performing a lot better because their race at this point is with Aston, who is quickly.
I will say that Abu Dhabi next week is going to be a great. It's Abu Dhabi, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Abu Dhabi next week is going to be a great track for both of them. So I think it'll be interesting to see how it goes between McLaren and Aston.
Yeah. I agree.
And then next up is Mercedes, greatest team of all time. And Hamilton started 11th. Russell,
did you say the greatest team of all time?
Russell started 4th.
My one word.
You said data doesn't lie.
You know my one word for Mercedes is? I only have one word responses for the lowest 3 teams, but I picked one word for Mercedes, and that is surpassed. Can you tell me why?
You haven't surpassed us.
Can you say why my word is surpassed? You know why.
Okay. Here's what happened this week. Up until
a big deal.
Up until Vegas, there was one team and one team alone that held the record for the most amount of race wins in a single season.
Mercedes.
And coming into this weekend, Red Bull and Mercedes both had 19 race wins. Coming out of this weekend, Red Bull now has 20. Record was beaten. And I don't think we will get it back.
No, it's
because
done.
I think after next weekend, it'll go from 20 to 21 in a 22 race season. And I don't think we'll have another RB19 in our lifetime.
This was a one and done, I think.
Yeah. We'll see. Maybe they'll go to 28 races and
that'd be insane. 28 races.
It's too many, right?
Anyway,
it's totally too many, right? We couldn't do one every weekend, right? No.
How the Mercedes have fallen.
The Mercedes have fallen. Qualifying was rough for Hamilton.
Yeah, Hammy was 11th.
Russ was up there, though. P4 in qualifying.
And then he bumped to P3 after
Bumped to P3. He had a great race until the overtly aggressive Dutchman decided to pummel down the inside. No, I know the FIA decided that it was Russell's fault.
Right.
What does the FIA row?
Rightfully decided that Russell actually was at fault.
No, Russell did turn into him.
He turned in.
And a lot of damage. A lot of damage to Russell's car.
Yeah.
They had to safety car came out, which honestly ruined Leclerc's chances of winning. And he had a ton of damage, but ended still. He raced his way up the field again. He raced hard. He had a 5-second penalty because of that crash. Hamilton finished 7th. He finished 8th. Technically, he finished ahead of Hamilton, but because of the penalty, he ended up dropping back a little bit. Yeah. So, again, Mercedes is just they're not feeling it. They're not getting that car dialed in. It's on a nice edge. Either it works or it doesn't. And this weekend was one of those kind of teeter-tottering on either side of working or not. Hamilton couldn't get it into place. Admittedly, he has, on his part, he's struggled with qualifying this year.
Yeah, he really has. I think at this point, they've been ready to get out of this car and to never look at it ever again.
Mm-hmm.
And so
they can't wait to throw it in the bin.
They can't wait for that. And again, as much of a non-Mercedes fan as I am excited for them to be more competitive.
100%. We want the whole field to be more competitive.
From Mercedes. You're hoping they can get it right.
Mm-hmm.
You're hoping that they're able to turn it on for next year.
Exactly.
Who knows? But yeah, I mean, it was a disappointing weekend for them. They had glimpses that they could have actually been on the podium. With Hamilton when he crashed into Piastri,
he was ripping through the field.
He was ripping through, and he lost 15 seconds from that.
Massive.
And so there was a possibility for them to actually perform at the front, and it just didn't happen.
It didn't happen. He made a move down on Oscar, got a puncture. What was crazy about that is that because we were in the pit lane entrance, when Piastri came by, it was a wall of titanium skid plates, sparks everywhere. And it was like every one of my dreams came true in that moment. And I was like, this is why I love F1. I started weeping. Not really, but it was pretty awesome. And then the next lap, Hamilton didn't think he had a pad puncture, but he had a slow puncture. Yeah. So he started losing, and he came in and he was sparking too. They'd done some damage to the bottom of Piastri's car, but he still ended pretty well. Hamilton said Vegas was Baku, but better.
Yeah. So, I mean, he actually had a good experience, even though he didn't finish where he wanted to with the race. He thought it was a good race.
Exactly.
Who knew that Toto Wolff would come out as an apologist for Vegas and really, he had a good opinion of the race, the entire production, and
very passionate, good opinion.
Oh, he did very, very high. So as a team, Mercedes, I think could have done better. They weren't able to get to where they wanted to. I think they'll do better next year when they're back in Vegas with a better car.
I agree. If they have a better car next year, they will do better. It's a big if with Mercedes. 2 years of duds. And now their dud is have them at second in the championship, but someone's got to take it to Red Bull. And I really hope it's them.
Yeah.
Or McLaren. But let's jump into Aston Martin because they had a pretty good weekend.
They actually did. And again, we mentioned this when we were talking about McLaren. We had kind of written off Aston Martin.
100%.
They had started at the front with Red Bull at the beginning of the season. They declined just as McLaren was ascending, and they passed each other, essentially, where they lost out on their place. They initially were second place. They lost that, then lost third, then lost fourth.
And they were falling.
They were just falling. They couldn't stop it. They finally got something right, and they kind of went back to their original design. And this week, Stroll qualifies 14th. Alonso qualifies 10th. Now, Alonso got tangled up. There was some cars hitting each other in the first corner. So he only finished 9th. But Stroll went from 14th to 5th, which is an incredible race. And he held on to 5th and finished with a huge haul of points. Mathematically, they are back in contention.
They're back in contention
with
again.
McLaren to take back 4th place, which at this point, no one would have been saying this a few races ago, that they would be at the end of the year with one race to go, mathematically able to take back 4th place.
No, not at all. Huge. And the biggest standout for me is that I feel like I owe Lawrence Stroll an apology.
I think you
know what it is? I think he was listening to F1 Rolling Start. Probably. And I think he was like, these guys are right. I do need to step it up.
I think we gave him some
motivation. I have been leaning on Daddy's credit for too long. And Daddy Stroll's not going to get me where I need to be. It's going to be me, Lancey Stroll.
We were his self-help coaches.
Yes, exactly. You can do it. Just do it, Lance. And he did.
Baby.
P5 at Vegas is no small feat. No small feat.
Absolutely not.
His teammate was complaining about the track. Lance Stroll put it in at P5.
Yeah.
It was a great weekend for Aston Martin. They're on the up and up. I'm very curious to see what next year looks like for them. There's rumors still flying that Lance Stroll's father, Lawrence Stroll, is going to possibly sell the team still, $1.2 billion, which is
what did he buy it for? Not that we would know.
I don't know. A Snickers bar and just on the factory. But yeah, we'll see what happens with Aston. It was a great week for them. I was really stoked to see the green cars up so high. But what was more surprising than that was how well Alpine did this week. At a track where speed was everything, and for the entire season, the storyline has been that they're underpowered and their aero sucks, which are two things you need for straight line speed.
Yeah, horsepower is less horsepower than the other cars.
Exactly. Now, the difference about Alpine, though, is that it's a bit of a bittersweet moment for them.
How so?
Tale of two drivers.
It is a tale of two drivers. So Gasly qualifies 5th, but starts 4th.
Mm-hmm.
Ocon qualifies 17th. And so you have two drivers at the opposite ends of the grid. Gasly can't get his tires on. He starts getting graining. He finishes 11th. Ocon finishes in 4th. And Ocon had a Deadpool helmet because Ryan Reynolds is one of the new owners. Right. First off, hang on a second.
Ryan
Reynolds is in
Reynolds.
everything.
Ryan Reynolds has his finger in all of the pies.
What is he not in? A, he's obviously one of the largest actors in the world. B, cell phone still.
The green, mint green or whatever it is.
He's now in European football.
Yep.
And has a incredibly successful TV show that has come out of Wrexham.
Yep.
Now he's in F1.
Yep.
And so anyway, Ryan, good for you.
Also rides motorcycles because he's
rides motorcycles. Also into gin aviation.
Yeah. He has aviation gin. He's out there, but he's in Deadpool. No, he's not in Deadpool. Well, he is Deadpool. But he this week was given a helmet by Esteban Ocon, who said he got emotional for giving him a helmet. I don't know if we go that far, but.
I mean,
and his justification for getting emotional was that he loves Marvel movies. I was like, okay, why are you getting emotional?
I'm like, I mean, yeah. Game recognizes game. Good for you.
Ocon's not game.
Here's the thing. He's one of 20.
Okay, fine.
You're one of 20 the
I can see that
fastest sport at the highest level in racing in the world.
Ocon's just kind of irritated me this season. I used to be about him because I felt bad for him because he grew up, and his dad and his mom gave everything for him to be in the sport, and he works really hard. But he's just kind of gotten a little whiny this season, and you know how I feel about people that are whiny.
Yes, you have very strong feelings about people.
Very strong feelings. That's why I don't like your friend.
Well, so Alpine, Gasly, a bummer of a finish. Ocon, good on you. Again, they're not in a race with anyone. Mm-mm. Because they are firmly
dead center
6th, and they're nowhere near.
They are completely
the next team. They're nowhere near the one behind. So it's like everyone's racing someone, but they're not racing anyone because they can't catch anyone and they can't be caught by anyone. So that's still kind of the reality of their year. But it was great to see Ocon finish where he did, and it's a bummer for Gasly.
It was a bummer for Gasly because I love Gasly, and he's been outperforming Ocon over the last few races. Yeah. And so it was cool to see Ocon get back up there. It'll be interesting to see how they do next year in overall and next week. Ferrari, what a race for Ferrari. Ferrari
so
came
much drama.
Through. Oh my gosh. Sainz starts. We're going to talk about the 10 pace.
We'll talk about that later.
Griddlety.
The
10 place grid penalty or griddlety. It's new. That can be our next mug. We'll call it the griddlety.
Perfect.
The Vegas griddlety. And he starts 10 places down. Mercedes is the team that has allegedly the one that was going to fight them getting an exception to give him the rule back. And what does he do? He goes, fine, I'll overtake you both. What a legend.
Savage.
I'm not a huge Carlos Sainz fan, but man, was I a Carlos Sainz fan this weekend.
He brought it. I was so impressed.
What a drive. He was
phenomenal.
Pissed. And he took it out on the track. And it drove him. At one point, his car was overheating. And they came on and they were like, you need to slow down or we're going to stop the car. We're going to have to retire the car. And he was like, I'm on it. And his version of on it was overtaking a car. He literally, like a second later, just rips around somebody. What a legend this week. Charles Leclerc, the Monegassian who loves to qualify P1.
Those announcers didn't even try to say that word because you knew they would have butchered it.
They called him Charles.
Charles
Leclerc. Those are the American commentators.
So true.
Man, what a race. He took it to Max He
overtook
overtook Max. Not because Max was in pain, not because Max had the wrong setup, not because he had the wrong tires, but because it was pure racing. And it was something
a phenomenal thing to see. It reminded me of last year,
yes,
when Ferrari looked as if they were going to run away with the season.
Yes.
And it was
inspiring.
such a good thing to see.
I
and
love
that was the other thing that was exciting about being there in person, is the passion that the fans bring to it.
Yeah.
And even if the overtake and the action isn't happening in front of you, the energy, and when the drivers would come down the straight where we were at, that's just an incredible energy that you got being there in person. And
people just standing up, everyone's yelling.
Oh, it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal.
People were singing songs. There was this one guy who kept singing Checo songs the whole time.
Everyone's like, okay, we got you.
We get it, bro.
You're a Checo fan.
We get it. You love Checo. It was awesome. Ferrari did an incredible job. Leclerc, obviously, he started out P1, ended P2. Carlos Sainz
at the last corner, the second to last corner, he overtakes Checo.
Yep. Started 12th. Did he get Carlos got caught up in the first corner drama too, right?
Well,
he was affected by
Max pushed him off the track.
No, that's Leclerc. I'm talking about Carlos.
Oh, sorry.
Carlos went even further back from 12.
Yes.
And then still fought his way all the way back up the field.
Yeah, he did.
He did an incredible job on Sunday. Ferrari was, they're approaching P2 in the Constructors' Championship. And in my opinion, and this takes a lot to say considering that P2 is held by my team at the moment, they deserve it. They are the only team that has taken it to Red Bull in an actual race. Mercedes has been there all season to consistently mop up as many points as they can take, like a dog under a table for the master's crumbs. But Ferrari is like the little kid that jumps up and steals the bread right off of the table. And it has been, it was amazing to watch. And it was so inspiring for next year.
Yeah, no, it was really exciting. They have, over the last 10 races, Ferrari has either outscored or tied Mercedes 8 times out of the last 10 races.
Insane.
So going into the final race of the season, if I'm going to bet, I'm going to bet on them. And they're only 4 points down from second place. That's nothing.
And last year, they beat
Mercedes by 20
at
points.
Abu Dhabi by 20 points. So it's a track for them. I'm so anxious. 4 points and the difference of $11 million happens next week. And so this week, my goodness,
it's this week.
And we will see where Ferrari ends. In my opinion, if they came out with half the grit that they had this last weekend, they'll do it. Unless Mercedes pulls a miracle out, I think we're looking at Ferrari in P2 again. The reality is neither Mercedes or Ferrari want P2. They want P1. No. But
they're champion
I enjoy
teams. Yeah,
I
love a good scrap, and I think they'll bring it next week. And I think it's going to be down to the wire.
We can't go into Red Bull before finishing on Ferrari with Charles taking Checo's P2 for the second week in a row. Checo was robbed of P2 in the last corner. Charles goes deep, straight around Checo. And into, I think they were 0.7 of a second apart. Yeah. Like
it was right there.
It was crazy. And
it was such good racecraft. And that was, I think, the thing that was impressive about Ferrari this week was they had adversity.
I'm going to stop you there. Not what's impressive about Ferrari. What's impressive about their drivers.
I'll receive that. Their drivers exhibited incredible racecraft.
The drivers could have delivered them a win. Ferrari did not deliver their drivers a win, because when you were watching the Vegas post cooldown car instead of the cooldown room that they all go to, of course, Vegas had to pick the drivers up in Rolls-Royce Phantoms and take Max, Checo, and Charles to the fountains of the Bellagio to have their interview, and then awkwardly watch the fountains, and then hop back in the car and go back to the start of the grid and
with
get
a single
on their
microphone.
Literally,
the interviewer has a microphone, and then he hands the microphone to them.
Oh my god!
I was like, do we not have the money for 2 microphones here in Vegas?
No, they spent their $500 billion. Okay, so here's what I'm saying is that when they were in the cooldown car. Max and Checo are talking about how at the restart, they both went in and got fresh tires. And you literally watch it back. You literally watch Charles go, why the hell didn't my team do that? Like, he realizes they were on a fresher set of tires than me.
Still overtook. That's impressive.
Still overtook Checo in the last corner with older tires. And had Ferrari been like, that accident with Russell and Piastri, which is what caused the safety car.
Yeah.
There was debris everywhere. As soon as they hit, you saw carbon fiber spew all over the thing. There was time for them to go, Charles, pull into the pits.
Yeah.
Do you know why I know that? Because Charles went by right at the pit entrance where we sat.
Yeah.
And then Max just goes, or not Max, everyone behind them, Charles just goes, brap, 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 straight into the pits. So every other team called it. Ferrari flopped it. And that, to me, is still an area coming off of last year into this year. Fred Vasseur has taken over. It's his first year. So I'm going to give him some break.
Yeah.
Next year, if we go into it and their flipping strategy hasn't pulled it out yet, it's like, what are you doing? Your drivers, they're at risk of losing Charles, in my opinion.
Oh, of course they are. Because if they do not return to winning ways, which, for reference, it's been a minute since Ferrari has been a dominant team.
Yeah. They've had wins here and there. Good moments.
There's been moments, but if
they still hold the most championships ever.
They do. But the only thing that matters is the next race.
Exactly.
Right? Like what you just did, yay.
That was an impressive Will Buxton pause you just did.
I know.
Dramatic
hero.
Pause. Wow.
Buxton. No, but this is the thing is everyone's looking forward.
Yep.
No one wants P2, P3, especially when you're the winningest team or you had 8 years in a row where you were the constructors champions. You've been at the top. Why are you going to settle for P2, P3? So I think if Ferrari does not start winning again, Sainz, Charles, they're going to look somewhere else.
Yeah. I don't think Sainz is going anywhere, but maybe someone wants him. I don't like him that much.
This weekend
I liked him
changed
this weekend.
my opinion.
I did. He moved me a little bit towards it.
He came back.
I still think he needs a lip reduction, but other than that, I think everything is fine. Okay, so Red Bull in Vegas. Max wins again. I love the way that David Crofty said it. What Verstappens in Vegas stays in Vegas. My goodness. Man, that's incredible. Second record broken.
Tied with Vettel now for the third most wins of all time.
Yeah, so it goes. Let's talk about who the most.
Talk about your boy.
Right. So Hamilton is the number one winning F1 driver of all time.
If you've watched the last
over
100
races,
you wouldn't know that.
But. I believe. I believe that is 107 wins. Then closely followed behind him is Michael Schumacher, who I believe has 91.
Yeah.
And then now, previously, prior to this weekend, was Sebastian Vettel, who was also a Red Bull driver.
Mm-hmm.
And he had 53 wins. Now moving into this weekend, Max Verstappen wins Vegas, gets 53, which is not just really cool, but it's also really interesting because Hamilton is mostly a Ferrari and a Mercedes driver.
Yes.
And I think his first championship was with McLaren, but every other one has been with Mercedes. So he's a Mercedes driver. Very clear Michael Schumacher is Ferrari.
Yeah.
Period.
Absolutely.
And then you have Sebastian Vettel, which is Red Bull.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have Max now, who is Red Bull and is now going to become the number one Red Bull winner of all time.
Yes.
So he's going to surpass. He's going to surpass Vettel, which is a big deal. And Vettel's one of the heroes of the sport.
Oh, he is.
And
and he's just a good human being. Not to go on a tangent about Vettel, but
he loves.
But no,
he loves oceans.
He loves bees too. It was a phenomenal week for Max. He didn't really come into the week with great things. No. We'll talk about that later.
He started third. He finished first. It was a good weekend for him. He definitely had some moments. A 5-second penalty.
He did.
It was a good race. He had fun. Checo, on the other hand, he also actually raced an incredible race. He started 12th. He came back. His front wing got decimated in the front in the first corner.
Yeah.
Like just destroyed. And he had to pit on the second lap. And so his race was definitely not what he was expecting, but he fought his way back through the field. He was in P2. He got pipped by Shaw, but he locked in P2 in the constructors. In the Drivers' Championship. So he is officially Red Bull 1 and 2 this weekend.
And that in and of itself is historic.
Another history moment in Vegas. And so it was pretty cool to watch that.
No, it was great to see. Again, there's been conversations this whole year about Max and the company he keeps, right? As far as how do we classify this guy? Is he one of the greats? At what point do we start talking about him as one of the greats?
Right.
And that conversation over the course of this season has just kind of become self-evident because it's not that the car that Red Bull designed is so dominant. It's that Max in that car is dominant because Checo got the same car. Checo's not dominant.
Yeah.
Right. So that combination of car, of driver has just been historic. And so now that he's tied for third and by all stretches of the imagination is going to move firmly into third with a win next week or this weekend, that is historic. He's one of 3 human beings in history with the amount of wins that he has at this point and what he's done. He is one of the greats at this point. And he's so young.
Yeah. He's got an amazing career ahead of him. I think Max Verstappen did a phenomenal job this weekend. I still wish that he would somehow transplant somebody else's personality into his world because what bugged me the most is that for the last 2 weekends, every time he's gotten a question about Vegas, it's been, I don't know, it looks stupid and looks like a pig. It's not going to be good racing. It's about the show. It doesn't look a complicated, kind of boring track. And you're like, okay, bro, like, dude, you've never even been on it. True. Gets there and he's like, after the opening ceremonies, the Hunger Games, he's kind of waving at people. He's like, it's 99% show. Yeah. It's 1% about the racing. Yeah. He's just dogging it the whole weekend. The P1 thing happens. He starts making comments about, I can't believe, if I was given a $200 voucher for this being canceled, then I can't believe that can't be right. There's no way they're doing that. And he goes from that to can't wait to be here next year. That was so much fun.
Dressed in Elvis
outfit and a P1 on the podium and singing Viva Las Vegas over the car radio back to his team.
It was a bit of a transformation over a very short amount of time.
Here comes the justification.
No, I'm not justifying it actually. Because here's the thing.
You don't like him either.
No, of course. I love Max. This is phenomenal. But I've been a Max fan from when he wasn't winning, right? Unlike some people. Here's the other thing about being there in person. There's some Mercedes fans who are there sitting behind us. They don't know. We don't know who they are. They don't know who we are. So it doesn't matter what I'm going to say about them. But they're like making a comment to you, the other Mercedes fan here. And they're like, oh, it's so great to like,
the real ones.
The real ones. And I was like, what do you mean the real ones? You're all a bunch of bandwagoners.
Oh my gosh. No, we're not.
You joined the championship 8 times, 7-time best driver winning team. Guess who's not a bandwagoner? I was with Red Bull from when they were.
They've always been the second. Get out of here. You're just like an underdog and you're now claiming it.
I can't stand when Mercedes fans act like they're like the true fans and they're like with a team that's
okay. In my defense,
such a hard time.
I came in when I started following Mercedes when they had 3 world championships. Still a lot, but that's fine. Your team had 4 when you started following them. They just weren't winning them in a row.
They weren't winning them, and they hadn't won any at that point.
Yeah. My team is the true underdog. Do you know what my team was before Mercedes bought them? Exactly.
No, I don't.
Exactly. Nothing. They were useless. Just like your team.
True.
Jaguar.
True.
But now my team is everything and your team is on our heels. You'll get there one day, Whippersnapper.
Your team is been absolutely non-competitive the last 2 years.
Okay, yeah, but data doesn't lie. We're still the greatest next to Ferrari.
This transitions us well into off-track conversation, I think. Because this off-track conversation is all about this, what I'm going to call the American effect on F1.
The glitz.
No, I'm serious, right?
Yeah.
F1, prior to a few years ago, had one race in the United States.
Which, by the way, was at risk of being canceled.
Yeah, right. It was
So
non-existent.
Austin race.
There were other sports that dominated the American psyche, as it were. And it's no secret that a Netflix show called Drive to Survive
Mm-hmm.
reignites the imagination of an American audience.
Makes them care.
It makes them care about this sport. And I think there's a lot of dynamics to why. But what's fascinating is Vegas was, I think, the most obvious race where you could see the American influence on F1. And I think that's why Max had the opinions that he had about it. A lot of these guys, they just want to race. They don't care for the show. A lot of these other races in other countries, the pre-show is the national anthem of that country. Like that's like the pre.
Yes. And a couple people waving flags or something.
That's it. And in Vegas, there's a
Red Bull does the helicopters and they spiral down.
Huzzah. I mean, like,
yes.
That's I mean, some helicopters spiraling down is awesome. But like Vegas, it's freaking.
Oh, it was next level. It was full tilt. It was a broadcasted concert.
It was a literal broadcasted concert. It was bigger than a NFL halftime show. And it's one of these things where I think,
every hotel had something in the strip, had something about F1.
It was unreal.
You've got grandstands everywhere.
Yes.
They've got John Legend. You've got Bishop. You've got
Journey was
30
there.
Seconds to Mars, Journey. You've
Keith
got
Urban.
Kylie Minogue, Keith Urban. You got all of these megastars, Steve Aoki. Yeah. You got all of these, Tiesto, like big, everything you could think of, they catered to everyone.
Yes.
And it was this massive show.
Yeah.
And then you have this track, which they're shutting down one of the busiest streets in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, unreal.
Which houses 4 of the largest hotels in the world on it, along with other hotels that aren't necessarily small.
No,
and
massive.
You're shutting down this epicenter of culture and this thoroughfare of money for a race.
You are.
And not only that, you're disrupting an entire city. And it was insane. And so you've got them coming in. And I had to remind myself, Europe is so small. Like Europe is tiny. You've got these countries that have like Baku. How many people live in Azerbaijan?
I don't even know.
Like 1 million? I don't know. It's a tiny city.
Yeah.
Like you look at some of these places where you have these historic races, and like the Red Bull Ring's in the middle of flipping nowhere. Yeah. Like there are these small things. You sit on one part and you can see 50% of the track.
Yeah.
You go to Vegas, we saw maybe 2-3% of the track from out.
Maybe
not cheap seats.
No.
And so just the enormity of the entire event was so America, and everyone was anti it, and it slapped. It slapped.
This was the thing about it. And this is, I think, my legitimate question is American involvement taking F1 to a new level?
Yes.
Or becoming a American sideshow?
No, I think that's a great question. I think the reality is things have to evolve or they die.
True.
And so there needs to be an element of the beauty of the roots and where it comes from. Places like Monaco are never going to leave the track. I have some ideas when we get to our Monaco episode in the off season of how we can improve Monaco. I'll hold them for there. Stay tuned. And we will always have that. And Europe is only so big. So you're never going to be...
these cities aren't growing as fast as an American city.
No, they're not going to go. And there's just not enough room. America's enormous.
Vegas, there's so much room to grow. It's the desert. It's literally...
And it wasn't full. There was 315,000 people there over the entire weekend.
Yeah, and it wasn't sold out.
And it was not. No grandstand. Number one, did you notice that when you watched it back, you didn't see a single grandstand?
I was so stunned. I was like, wait, where's...
Not a single grandstand because they weren't full. They were not full. They were not full. And that's fine. But the reality is that as it grows,
Yeah.
there's so much room to add more grandstands.
Yeah.
They
the
could bring
competition.
1 million people into that city, and the city can handle it. It would be insane.
That's crazy.
But it could handle, and that's where I see the future of F1 going. Is it had its issues, like we'll talk about them, I'm sure. But I'd much rather go there than I would Miami.
Oh yeah.
The only race that I would want to go to other than Vegas is Coda.
Yeah.
Because for me, it's the pure racing track. It's a beautiful racing track. I would love to see it.
Texas.
It's incredible.
It's Austin.
And Austin has great barbecue.
Yeah.
And so there's that. Vegas was insane. Let's talk about why it took up until the race to prove that Vegas was insane.
So Vegas is, again, it is what it is. We know what Vegas is. Walking into it kind of proved that.
It's a street track.
It's a street track.
First time it's ever used.
First time. It's not like a complex track necessarily. There's a lot of sideways energy going on.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much of an extra show, and we can't get a sense of what Vegas is actually going to be. And so I think there's so much assumption going up until the actual race. And the first moment that Vegas has a chance to let drivers get out onto the track to kind of say, we're here.
By the way, it was at ungodly times of the day.
Oh, yeah.
The city that never sleeps doesn't mean that the freaking country doesn't sleep. People in New York trying to watch the race at 3 a.m. in the morning.
It was
Get out of here.
Awful, awful times. But the first opportunity Vegas has to like
FP1.
show its stuff, FP1, within 8 minutes, it's a street track. So there's manhole covers, there's access covers to things like the sewer and water. And these cars have an immense amount of downforce, which is essentially just suction. They create suction.
It sucks the car to the track,
Yep.
But it also means it's sucking the ground up to the car.
You know what I realized as I was reflecting back on what I'm about to say? This experience in Vegas proved that light speed is not possible. Because imagine a Star Trek size ship blasting through space at light speed. They hit a speck of dust and that thing's going to explode.
Oh, Benjamin.
Going at 199 miles an hour down the straight, hits a water cover about, 2-3 inches wide. That water cover tore the bottom of his car.
Decimated it. Ripped the battery out.
Literally, it looked as if
took a chunk of the transmission out. It was insane.
So FP1.
But here's the thing. This is to the level. Number one, you don't understand Star Trek because that's why they have a deflector dish, which deflects the stars around them and the space dust so that they can.
Clearly, I don't.
Obviously,
thank you for explaining the deflector dish to me.
They also don't exist, so that's why it's impossible.
The deflector dish would explode.
That's what Carlos Sainz needed. Okay, so they suck the car to the track and they suck the track to the car.
Yes.
Vegas prepared. It's not the only street track in the world.
No, of course.
Monaco's a street track.
Yes.
Baku's a street track.
Singapore is.
They welded the manhole shut in Vegas.
They did.
It ripped the concrete up surrounding the manhole. That is the level of how do you plan for that? Hey guys, we have these manholes. We don't want these to come up. So make sure you head up. Sick. I'm going to weld it to the metal that is concreted in. And then that's going to hold it in place. The car's like, actually, I'm going to go ahead and rip the concrete out.
Unreal. So again,
So it lasted 9 minutes. His car got destroyed.
Ocon's car also.
Ocon's car got damaged, but not destroyed.
Not destroyed. So that is the first experience we have of Vegas.
And Europe goes wild.
The entire world is going wild and saying, see,
this is why we couldn't do it. It's all about you spent too much time trying to sell tickets and building a building instead of building a track. Meanwhile, you've got the guys out there with like epoxy and cement trying to like get these every manhole covered up and every single drain pipe smoothed over that they can. And you got everyone up in arms. FP2 gets delayed
by, was it 5-6 hours, something
Yeah,
crazy?
so I think it was. We'll have to fact check this
Yeah, we'll
later,
fact check
but
it.
I think it was supposed to start 8:30. I think it was supposed to start at 11:30, and it ended up starting at 2:30, and it ended up being a 90-minute session. Imagine sitting in your hotel room that you've paid $1,000 for.
Yeah.
And, you know, getting lucky playing Pai Gow in the old casino, and you come upstairs and you go to lay your head on your pillow, and it's 2:30 a.m., and all you hear is frow, frow for an hour and a half. It was
Yeah, that
nuts.
wasn't really thought out.
The reporters were leaving, and then after they ended 2:30 to it's supposed to start 2:15 and got delayed 15 minutes. So 2:30, 90 minutes plus 2:30 is 4 a.m.
4 a.m. Yep.
4 a.m. Then the drivers go and they have to do press contractually.
Yeah.
They are required
They
to do
get
the
fined
press
if they don't.
correct directly after for a certain period of time. And then after they do press, they go into a 90-minute debrief with the entire team and all of the engineers. So you had reporters, you had teams getting back to their hotel rooms between 5 and 6 a.m. and having to be back at the track again at 3 p.m. that day.
Yeah, it wasn't a good look. For
what colossal understatement of the year. It wasn't a good look.
It wasn't a good look. This is
people were nervous. They were hiding their children.
A little nervous. This was a $500 million gamble on F1.
They put $500 million on black, and it was looking like it was about to land on red.
And then a man named Toto Wolff
comes out in the press conference.
The press conference comes out as, who would have thought?
So a reporter asks Toto, he says, do you feel like FP1 has given Formula One as a whole, by the way, a black eye?
To which Toto said words I won't repeat.
You're an idiot. No, I can't believe it. You're saying these things. When was the last time you read something nice about someone? Never. Okay. He says, not a black eye. FP1, street tracks everywhere. Okay. The manholes come up. This is not the first time. What Formula One has done is amazing. This is a great spectacle. Taking it to the next level, but you're not going to write about that.
It was, I have
love
a lot
Toto.
of respect for Toto. I gained so much appreciation. I was like, I'm not a fan of
Everyone
Vegas
loves
as a
Toto.
city, but again, give it a chance to prove you wrong before you write your 1,000 words or 250 words or whatever the heck you're writing these days in articles about how bad it is. And with all your clickbait, articles and stuff in there. So it was incredible for him to come out, the other team bosses to say, listen, it's going to be great. It's going to be great. And then for it actually to be one of the best races, if not
ever.
The best race of the year.
Yeah. It was one of the best races this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Period. Full stop.
100%. I would say it was the best race this year. We had more overtakes at the front of the pack. You had all the teams fighting. It wasn't Red Bull running away with it. They were actually having to use race strategy and
Max won by like 2 seconds.
Not a lot. Well, he slowed down. So Checo.
So maybe he would have won by 3 or 4.
Max slowed down, inverted commas. If you're listening on Spotify and you're not watching, slowed down as best as he could
to give Checo a toe.
Yeah, exactly. Get out of here, guy's such a what an image of team player Max Verstappen is. Anyway, so
I'm trying to
because you can't. There is no comeback to that. He's not a team player. FP3 was whatever, and then qualifying was honestly, I got nervous at qualifying because it was kind of boring.
Yeah,
because it is on paper it actually is a simple track, and I was like, oh flip, everything they're saying is going to be true, and I was Team Vegas. And then because qualifying was like whatever, if you could, there was enough room, the track was big enough for everyone to spread out and get their times in.
Yeah,
there was a couple things that irritated me, like Hamilton not being able to get his tires turned on, but other than that, it was pretty straightforward.
Greatest of all time, right?
Greatest of all time. And he, it was whatever. And then we got into the race, and it was just amazing. It was like watching a choreographed, like Cars movie or something. Like it was just
incredible.
Leclerc was ahead, then Verstappen's ahead,
Then
and then
Sergio was leading.
Lance Stroll's in P2. Like, what is happening here? What is going on? It was just a wild race. Oscar Piastri's hanging out. He hasn't changed his tires for 45 laps.
Unreal.
Like, what is going on? It was amazing. Williams sucks again. Like, all of the things are happening. It was a wild race. It was a race of comebacks. It was incredible. It was an American race. It was the underdog race.
It was, and
even though Max won, it was like people were scrapping and fighting, and they had their elbows out, and it was clean, and it was awesome.
It was Vegas, baby. What else can you say? It
was Vegas. It was incredible. But it did bring up a point.
Yes.
Moving on from Vegas.
Yes.
To FIA rules. So honing in on that first practice incident where Carlos Sainz's car sucked up that manhole, decimated. So he
Star Trekked that manhole.
Had to change a part on his car, which caused him to get a 10-place grid penalty.
Yeah.
This is what
wasn't his fault.
Wasn't his fault that the car and the track failed.
Yes.
So what we had is that you had the FIA in a bit of a tough situation because they're saying, okay, we agree that your car pulled this piece of track up that shouldn't have been pulled up. And that in turn has now caused you to have to change parts on your car that are going to cause you to be disqualified. But at the same time, you have the same amount of parts at the beginning of a season that every other person and every other team has.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not the only streak track we go to. And over the last 4 years, this is not the first time something like this has happened.
There's like man covers that have been pulled up by cars before.
Exactly. And the exact same thing has happened.
Yes.
And so they're saying we can't enforce this rule because this is a new track, because it's not, although it's a new track, this is not a bespoke issue to Vegas.
Yeah.
This is a normal issue, which is why we have an allocation of engines and transmissions and battery units and all kinds of things. And so the controversy is that because of this accident, Carlos had to put a new, I believe it was battery, and
a new battery.
It was a new battery.
Yeah.
And he had used all of his allotment for the season. And so when you use beyond your allotment, it's an automatic penalty.
Yeah.
So no matter where you qualify, it's 10 places less than that, which is huge in a race because where you start dictates the entire race most of the time. And so they were fighting for an exemption to be made. Here's where it gets interesting.
Real interesting.
The real reason why it didn't get accepted is because every team but one, who remained unnamed by the FIA.
We all know who didn't.
Maybe it's the team that's now only 4 points away from being overtaken by Ferrari.
You think?
Let's put it out there. Mercedes said, we are not going to allow an exception to be made. But at the same time, not just because I'm a Mercedes fan, how do you make partly because I'm a Mercedes fan, but partly I'm like, how do you make the exception? I hate rules. And so now we instate another rule into the FIA that they have to then now, every time we go to a new track and some random thing happens, it's going to be an exemption. Every time that, like, where do you draw the line? For me, I'm like, if your car was more reliable and you didn't have to change out your engines, then you'd be fine. You have an allotment for this reason. You chose to change your battery pack when you didn't need to because you wanted a performance gain. Now
probably in Monza, honestly.
You didn't. Now, because you've done that, you have no margin for the last 2 races. And so because of that, I'm supposed to give you an exemption now?
I can understand that. I think
because it's true.
And I'll continue. I think the thing that I am my opinion here is that when there is a factor that impacts a team that is truly outside of their control, it's outside of their control. It was a piece of the track that destroyed the car of Carlos Sainz. It negatively impacted both Ferrari and Sainz. It could have actually been a very dangerous thing.
100%.
Right? Incredibly dangerous for Sainz. it ended up that he was okay. But when that happens, and it's truly like not an act of God kind of scenario, but it's something that was absolutely unforeseen. In those moments, I think there needs to be margin where not every team has to sign off, because there will always be at least one team that you're in competition with. And it's not in their best interest to sign off, because again, Mercedes at this point in second place, these places again are worth tens of millions of dollars. They're not going to sign off and say, sure, Ferrari, our main competition.
You can have your P2 spot back.
Have your P2 spot back and potentially surpass us this race.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why I'm saying, like,
but it's not just that, Ben. It's not what you just said terrifies me. We need to make exceptions.
No. Hang on a second.
Where do you draw the line?
That's not what I'm saying. There needs to be, because the FIA loves being really clear and really detailed about everything.
Exactly.
I'm saying there needs to be clauses that are really clear, really detailed, where it says if, and you can name the scenarios if you want to.
No, but that's the thing. Okay, so what happens when it says something out of control? You have to be able to name it. You can't just say when something out of control happens.
Specifically
that car crashed into me because they were out of control. No. But how do you justify that?
It has to be something that is within the FIA's realm or F1's realm that they're responsible for. F1 was responsible for the entire event. Right.
This is fair.
The FIA is responsible to make sure that the entire event runs smoothly and is safe. It was their responsibility. They failed because the track that they were responsible for getting ready freaking sucked up into the Ferrari's car and destroyed the entire bottom of the car. So when they fail and it's their fault, that's when I think there needs to be a clause that allows for not all 10 teams to sign off, but maybe 8 or 9, that's the threshold. And if you can get 8 or 9 teams to sign off on an exemption, the exemption stands. That still allows for there to be a check and balance. But
when do they make this decision? Do they need to make it before the end of the practice session? Do they need to make it post-race?
Well, post-race wouldn't make sense.
I mean, not post-race, post-session.
Yeah, I think.
Like, what if that happened during the race?
It needs to be something that's decided in as much as real time as possible.
Well, I only asked this because in 2021, there was a rule that a race director who works for the FIA made to break a rule that they set based off of judgment and said racing it's a race.
He made a mistake. Christian Horner, Horn Dog, he admits he made a mistake. He should have let the other cars pass, and he didn't. He made a mistake.
I'm just saying.
I'm saying FIA has made another mistake.
We don't need something that says if you do this, we have allotments, and if you want to risk it and something happens, you should know you're going to a street track. So you're telling me that they should no longer plan for something to happen at Monaco because if anything goes wrong with the track, it's going to be the FIA's fault and they'll get an exemption on that. Then they get a brand new engine with 0 penalty. It doesn't make any sense.
At Monaco, it wouldn't be a penalty because at that point in the season, you have your allotments and you're probably not over your allotment.
Yes, but you can't have. So then do we only have a rule that comes in towards the last 5 races of the year? Like there's too many. There's a lot of variables.
There's a lot of variables. Here's my thing.
It's just a rule. And if you use too many parts, you're getting a penalty.
Here's my thing. I'd like the FIA to take responsibility. The FIA.
They did.
When they didn't say sorry. They said, here's a 10
They're British. They don't say sorry.
Here's a 10-place grid penalty for something that was destroyed your car, could have seriously caused you bodily harm, cost you.
No, you didn't read the press review.
Here's a 10-place.
They said it was unfortunate. To me, I'm saying that's
what a bunch of assholes. I'm sorry. We don't swear. We swear on this podcast.
Oh my gosh.
I can't handle how it's not our fault. We don't take responsibility. We're above that. We're untouchable. You're not untouchable. And you know why? I'm an American.
I'm sorry. Who are you a fan of? Max Verstappen. When was the last time he took responsibility for a single thing?
He's not American. He's Dutch.
Oh my gosh. I'm so done. Anyway, the rules I don't think they should change. Ben thinks they should change. We want to know what you think. Put it in the comments and let us know if you believe that the FI needs to reevaluate the rules or not. I believe Sainz got an unfortunate but justified penalty.
Absolutely not.
You believe he
didn't do anything
an
wrong.
unfortunate.
Last thought I'll say on this. Imagine, I don't know, in American sports, if a baseball player, a batter, is at the batting box and he's batting and then gets grilled by a baseball in his head, and the umpire is like, strike 3, you're out.
No, that's not even irrelevant. That's not even irrelevant. No, it's not, because you just named something that's done by 2 different humans.
In American sports,
what happens when a bat breaks?
When a bat breaks
in baseball, this is terrible because I don't know the answer to this. But what happens when you hit a ball and a bat breaks?
It's still fair.
What happens if it goes foul when the bat breaks?
It's foul.
Great.
What I'm saying,
he hit something and it went foul. It's still
the difference here is that Sainz physically was affected. In baseball,
the way your eyes just
physically affected, aka ball to the head, and the umpire's like, you're out.
You can't compare baseball and Formula One. Oh my gosh, he was not penalized for no reason. He was penalized because his team hasn't given him a reliable car. They've swapped out too many parts, and they took a gamble that they weren't going to break anything on the last 2 races. They could have broke their own battery, and they still would have gotten a 10-place grid.
That I wouldn't have an issue with.
It's the same thing, because the rule overall we have the rule not because engines can't make it through a season. We have the rule because things like this happen.
Things like this do happen. All I'm saying is that the threshold for getting other teams to sign on should be lower than all teams.
There is no sign teaming off. That was an idea floated. That's actually not a real thing. They can't say everyone signs it.
What I'm saying is
the rule is the
there should
rule.
be an actual clause that says, in this scenario, this is an option.
We're never going to agree.
We're never going to agree on this. We should move on.
Will Checo's, the last thing we have is will Checo's critics quit? No. How many points does Max have?
It's too much, really.
582.
It's more than Mercedes.
It's more than Mercedes
and Ferrari
combined.
It's a lot of points. I think Checo, he's here to stay for now.
He'll get the seat through most of next year.
I think we'll get through most of next year. I think they will give him a certain amount of races
for sure
next year to get back up to where they feel that he needs to be. And then I think from there it's free range what happens.
Yeah, I agree. I think Checo is still, I don't think he's going into the end of this season feeling ecstatic about how he's performed this year. No. The narrative around him is not changing. He will go into next year, and the questions will be, is Checo going to perform?
You got to keep performing.
You're only as good as your last race.
Yeah, glad that he locked down P2. That's great for the teams. Never happened before. Mm-hmm. I do think that moving into next season, yeah, I think they'll give him half the season.
Agreed.
And if not, then
Danny Rick.
Yeah,
we'll see. In there.
We shall see.
Man, a lot happened off track.
So much happened off track. I mean, it was quite the weekend. It's too much to even recount. Even some of these other guys who have shows were like, where do we start? Where do we stop? This is going to be one of our longer shows purely because of all the insanity. It's wild. Vegas.
It was great racing.
What can you expect? You expect?
We always talk about why F1 is important to us.
Yeah, we do. And I think for me, this showed up this week. Mm-hmm. There aren't a lot of sports where man and machine have to be so in sync. And F1 is so unique in that way. Other sports don't have that absolute relationship with technology, with machinery, the way that F1 does.
Yeah.
And you see great race drivers, the best race drivers, who pick the wrong machine.
Yep.
And they spend years away from winning. Alonso's a great example of that.
Yep.
You see
Daniel
other race
Ricciardo's
drivers.
another one.
Yeah, Daniel Ricciardo's another one where he just made a wrong decision, and the machine was never as good as the driver. You see other examples where there's some drivers who probably aren't that great, but the machine's better. And they're in a different space. And then you see some drivers, you think of Hamilton when he was dominating, you think of Max as he's dominating, you think of the McLaren boys now, where the driver, the machine are finally in sync. And I think this is what is the absolute fascinating thing about F1 is that there's so many factors. You're not just relying on an athlete.
No.
In basketball, in football, in baseball.
That's why the
soccer.
draft works in those sports.
It's why the draft works.
Because you take LeBron and you put him with the Cavs.
And you hand him a basketball and the same, tennis shoes, essentially. There's not a whole lot of other factors. No. It's just pure raw talent. That's what gets you and teams championships. In F1, it's not pure raw talent. It really isn't. It's pure raw talent plus 1,000 people.
The right 1,000 variables, which are the people and what they work on to give you an instrument that can deliver race wins.
It is unreal. And when teams get it right, it's an incredible thing to watch. And that's why Mercedes, when they dominated, Ferrari, when they dominated, Red Bull, as they're dominating, that's why it's so incredible, because everything has to go right. And that relationship between the vehicle and the man and the driver, it has to just be there. And here's the crazy thing. It doesn't even happen for teams that have a phenomenal car. Checo's a great example of that. Max ignited that car in a way that Checo still can't. And it's because they designed it around Max. We know that.
100%.
But here, that's the incredible thing too, is even when you've got the best designed car, potentially in the history of the sport, the driver is still so critical and crucial, right? So that's something about F1 that I think you just don't see in other sports. And it's something that makes it distinct. And it's something where the details matter so much.
So much. The people that go into it, I think what's fascinating about this is that you've got a driver who has, for the better part of their entire life, like you look at someone like Lewis Hamilton, he started racing karts at about 5 or 6 years old. He's now 38 years old. So for the better part of 32 years, all he has been doing is racing cars.
That's unreal.
So you have someone that is literally orientated their entire life around, and that's not abnormal. That Max is the same way. Checo, all those guys have been racing since they can remember. They can't remember anything but racing. But then you have these teams. You have around 1,000 people. You've got engineers, you've got mechanics, you've got designers, you've got all these different assets, all working together to develop this one item to give essentially this test tube created driver and this athlete the right pairing. And that's the thing that fascinates me. I love and I have so much respect for these team principles.
Yeah.
Because you also have one driver and you have one person in charge.
Yeah.
And so you've got one driver can control his life. He can surround himself with a trainer. He can make sure that he's disciplined. He can he can do what he needs to do, eat what he needs to eat, train the way that he needs to train.
Yeah, absolutely.
Develop his body to be ready for a race, his mind to be sharp, work on reaction. Fill in the blank. One person can orchestrate that for themselves.
Yes.
One person organizing 1,000 individuals to develop 2 cars that are going to be the 2 greatest cars in the world. That's their goal. That is their goal. What are we doing this year? Well, we're setting out to do what we tried to do last year. What's that? Create the 2 fastest, greatest race cars in the entire world.
That's unreal.
It's unreal.
That's why you have to have so much respect for team principles, even if they're not your team.
100%. Red Bull's not my team. I have mad respect for Horn Dog.
Absolutely. Likewise for Toto. I mean, these guys are legendary.
Well, Toto deserves respect.
So does Horn Dog. With a name like Horn Dog. Horn Dog. deserves respect. No, but the ability to, again, organize, orchestrate,
Yes,
get everyone on mission for a singular goal, and then to execute it, and
exactly.
to do it in a way that these teams have done over the years, where they are in a sport among their peers, and yet they stand
100%.
alone in what they've been able to achieve. That is talent, skill, leadership. I mean, all the
you see it played out, and I love the way that Toto says it. I'm going to botch the quote exactly, but basically he says, I can't design a car. I can't construct an engine or go into the wind tunnel and tell you what's going to make us the fastest. I just create the atmosphere.
Yes.
That makes it possible for us to create the best car and the best drivers.
Yeah.
And that's what they do.
Yeah.
Not this year or the year before, but that's what they do in general.
You said it.
And so I love that about F1. I think the reason why it's so unique is because it takes real leadership.
It does, and it takes a lot of patience. And this is a thing that we Americans are not really great at. We love sports that are fast, that are quick, that have a lot of action, and where teams can shift and change and win and lose quickly. Yeah. In F1, when you're moving 1,000 people in one direction, guess what? If you went the wrong direction, it's going to take a minute for you to turn those 1,000 people around to the right direction. So that's why people don't talk in terms of, races or even seasons. They talk in terms of years.
Yeah.
Hey, in 3 years, we'll be at the front. Yeah. Right. And that's something that's really distinct about this as well, because every tiny thing matters. Yeah. And when a team gets it wrong, it's going to be a couple of years until they get it right. And I think some folks don't have the patience for that type of sport. But when you realize that's the sport, it makes you appreciate the detail at another level, which 100%. I think is why we just love F1.
Yeah, that 100%, because it takes a while to not just move 1,000 people, but to move the needle on creating the greatest race cars in the world.
Yes,
Otmar came into Alpine before they sacked him, and he had a 5-year plan because he's been around F1 and he knew what it took to take a team from where it was to winning races. They didn't like that, but the reality is he did that at Racing Point, which is now Aston Martin, where he took them from nothing with a budget of nothing to winning races.
Yeah, they were winning races.
They were winning races, and so he knew how to do it. It's about getting the right people, and in this industry, the right people are on other teams. And there's contracts and there's waiting periods and there's time. Yep. And so it takes time to get into the zone. It's hard to get there, but I love the dynamic between machine and man. I think what's interesting to me is that it's the pairing that matters.
Yes.
So you have talent can be recognized.
Yes.
George Russell is a talented driver. When he was at Williams,
he
was saying, do I even have to finish this race? Like, we should just come in and retire the car, save the engine, as if that was going to help. He qualified well. He outdrove the ability of the car in qualifying.
Yeah, the machine was not up to par.
It wasn't a race. I think that created something in him so that when he comes to Mercedes, and you've got Hamilton for the last, 7 years has been winning race titles and constructors titles.
Yeah.
He's had a car that worked every time he got it. That was easy to set up. There were races when that car wasn't set up in their dominant days, but they still had more horsepower.
Yeah.
And they were still able to make race wins. And then you come into a season where the car's on a knife's edge and it's going from one side to the other. You never know what you're going to get. Sometimes this season, overnight, this car would just flip the script on him. It was insane. No one could actually work out why it wasn't working anymore. But Russell somehow has been able to pull out these incredible qualifying sessions because why? He's had to perfect his mindset around man and machine.
Yeah, he's had to exercise that piece of himself in a way that someone who's had a certain luxury as far as a dominant car just hasn't had to. And so, again, there's so many elements to what make an incredible team, but team principle, the driver, the machine, and just the ability of 1,000 people to have a
behind it.
singular vision
Yes.
and to move in the same
To
direction
execute on it.
is something that really is unique to F1 in a way that other sports really can't touch in the same way. So
it truly is an incredible sport. It was so incredible being at the Vegas race. It was an experience of a lifetime.
yeah, it
Next
really
time
was.
we're getting a hotel room and not driving back.
Not acting like we're 19.
No. But next week is Abu Dhabi, and it is going to be wild. Red Bull has already cinched the constructors world champion.
I mean, that's old news.
Max is in first place. Checo is in second place. There are still some driver switch ups that could happen.
Absolutely.
The main thing that I'm looking at is Williams and AlphaTauri, seeing if AlphaTauri can come back again, score some points. I'm looking at Aston Martin and McLaren.
Yeah.
Is Norris going to come out swinging like he did last year in Abu Dhabi, or are we looking at an Alonso and now Stroll resurgence? And then, of course, the big one, which is 4 points between them. This weekend will decide what happens with P2 and the constructors between Ferrari and Mercedes. Will Mercedes be able to win back a spot this year, or will they remain P3?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of these things where the narrative the entire season has been, if Verstappen wasn't part of this, there'd be so much competition. If Red Bull wasn't part of this, there'd be so much competition. And you're seeing that play out all along the grid, where you've got multiple teams who are all within striking distance of each other, down to the last race. And again, yes, P1 is decided. Yes, the constructors is decided. All of these spots, again, are worth millions of dollars. And so these teams have every incentive to push as hard as they possibly can against their rivals this upcoming weekend. And so, I think Abu Dhabi is going to be wild. An incredible race. It's going to be wild.
5 a.m. in the morning for us. So excited about that. But it's going to be good. Who do you think's going to win?
I mean,
do we even have to say?
Do we even have to?
Hamilton.
Max.
Oh.
I think Hulk is going to take his
Hulk.
Everyone's going to crash out, and Hulk
is going to come through. No, I think it'll be. I'm just going to say what I want it to be. I want it to be Hamilton, Checo, Norris.
Okay.
Max is going to crash. Not get hurt, but just a light tap. Knock his gearbox out like he did a couple years ago.
Sure. I'm gonna say Max is gonna win, just because the data doesn't lie. I am gonna say though that Mercedes has a lot to prove, and I really think they're gonna come out swinging as hard as they can, and I think it's gonna be second and third.
You heard it here, folks. Ben predicts the podium as Hamilton P1, Russell P2, and Max P3.
No.
And that's all that we have time for this week. Thanks for joining us on Rolling Start. Don't forget, if you want our mugs, we won't even wash them. And we're going to sign the bottom of these.
Wine stains and all.
Craft made in China mugs. And so you can go ahead and sign up for all things F1 Rolling Start to make sure that you get your chance of getting one of these. We'll send it to you, and we'll see you next week after Abu Dhabi.
See you, folks.